to the Sober Witch Life podcast. I'm Sunshine, and I'm today's podcast. I will tell you. Sorry, I will tell you where it's been inspired. Yesterday, my partner and I, two of the founders of the Sovereign Phoenix, decided to officially. I shouldn't say we decided yesterday. We decided this a long time ago, but yesterday we started our formal peer recovery coach training. And so that really had me thinking about kind of like, what is this role like? Yeah, it just had me thinking, right? And so I thought I would share a little bit of that story with you here today, right? There's one thing that I have realized in my recovery, right? 6.5 years, hopefully, God has blessed me many or more years to come. But there's something that I find I've asked over and over again as I've been in recovery. It's like, really, what can I do to continue to stay on this path? Right. And I do think that we start to make conscious actions and decisions that are aligned with the new life in recovery that we've created. And one thing that keeps ringing true to me over and over again is really being of service, right? I do believe that in order for us to be, really sound and solid in our own recovery, there's a huge benefit to being of service. And, really like helping other people. And this can be in any way, as I described, like in my philosophy of a witch, I believe one of the pillars of being a witch is that we are here on this earth in order to be of service to others. And for some, it can be as simple as, raising really amazing human beings, like having children and raising really amazing human beings. And for others, it can be, when you're on that path of recovery, helping other folks in recovery. And so we decided to pursue this certification as a part of kind of solidifying this foundation of the Sovereign Phoenix, right? And so part of where this came about, like how I was thinking about this, is we've been operating for about a year and a half. The recovery circles, we've been operating now almost for about half of a year. Some of these other, programming, right? Community-based programming, these group programs to strengthen psychic gifts and, strengthen intuition and practice magic and learn how to do spell work and all of that kind of great stuff. And so here's a funny thing. We're gonna pause here for a second. I'm gonna close the door because I think we're picking up. Okay. There we go. They are, life, right? I record the podcast as a part of my life. It's part of the reason we don't really edit these, right? I don't believe in trying to make things look perfect. Anyways, I digress. We were looking at everything that we are offering to the recovery community, and all of these things were from a group perspective. And I kept asking this question. We would have people show up almost week after week in the recovery circles. I would have folks that would join in on the Recovery Coven, and yet we would find out that people sometimes would never talk. They wouldn't share. And it really occurred to me that I think as individuals are in these recovery journeys, not all of them are going to be at the place that they feel comfortable or confident to actually open up in a group setting. I always respect that and honor that in the circle. I do encourage it because there's a lot of healing that comes in being witnessed. There's just a lot of healing that comes in being witnessed. But the truth is, we had nothing that we were offering on a regular basis for folks that really needed, not just desired, but desired and needed that one-on-one support. And so in order to do this, we thought, both my partner and I had this conversation that it would really make sense. And, frankly, we can start to help out in the community in another way too, like not just within the Recovery Coven, but to help in the community. Because as you go through the recovery coach certification process, you get to learn all sorts of things, but it's really an emphasis on multiple pathways. So we get to support the folks, the recovery community here local in a much different fashion, let alone the actual nonprofit in and of itself. And then as I was kind of putting the notes together for the podcast, I was thinking about, right, so we're talking about recovery, that not everybody may be at a place where they feel comfortable or confident to talk in a group, right? They may still be dealing with cycles of shame or guilt or not certain where to go. But we're also going to add into this component the fact that most of the individuals within our kind of circle, our ecosystem, I don't know how else to call it, our community, right? Because not everybody's going to feel like they're in when they're like circling around on the outside. But the thing that we all have in common is we identify as a witch, or like witch adjacent, so to speak. And you had these two very stigmatized groups, folks that practice witchcraft and folks in recovery. And these individuals may be very hesitant, right? They may have experienced a lot of stereotyping or stigmatization on either side. They may have been ostracized by their family. They may have been, kicked out of their own, kind of social circles because of the recovery or the witchcraft, let alone both. So this to me emphasized what we need even more, right? Like we need to be doing this. We need to be sharing. We need to be talking about this. The fact that we have this, which, begs to differ. I'm going to talk about a couple of things today, is that there are different roles. There are different support roles that individuals can play in someone's recovery journey. So I'm going to talk about a bit of those and let you know. And this is not saying that any one is better than another, but they all have their different purposes. And the first one is a therapy, right? Therapists. And not talking about a psychiatrist or a psychologist at this particular point. I'm talking about a literal therapist, a licensed mental health, kind of therapist. And these individuals are incredibly fabulous at helping folks navigate any type of like unpacked trauma, any type of like patterns in their like their mental kind of like their thought patterns or behavioral patterns, and working really on the deeper layers of experience, right? And, helping to create tools in the mental health arena. Really beautiful. Like I worked with a therapist for a long time, probably since I was in my early 30s up until I think only 3 years ago. And, so like what, I don't know, probably about 10 to 12 years is probably, I worked with a therapist. And it can be huge, right? Especially if this is the only option that you're familiar with, is to go down the therapy road. There are a number of therapists that specialize even in addiction in and of itself. So they're going to help you understand like the chemicals in the brain and why we chase the dopamine and all that kind of great stuff. Therapy was the first place that I could actually talk openly about everything and not feel like I was judged either, right? So they can be so good. At the same time, they are clinical, right? Therapists are not going to share their own stories. It's like literally a no-no. There's going to be this big disconnection between understanding something like intellectually, like, oh, I can see why my brain works that way, versus the actual real life lived experience, like how someone literally may have experienced the change in their mental patterning, right? Now, some therapists themselves may offer like a group therapy, and you might get a little bit of a flavor of a group therapy and get some of that. But for the most part, we're talking about one-on-one work with folks right now. Which then brings us to a very common role in addiction recovery, which is the sponsor. If you've ever stepped foot behind into any type of 12-step program, whether this is AA, NA, OA, GA, MA, right? If you know what those all mean, you know what they are, right? SLAA, yeah. You're going to know that there's a role of somebody that's considered a sponsor. And a sponsor does absolutely bring their lived experience into the relationship, right? And there's something really powerful about connecting with somebody that's been there and done that, that's walked the path, right? That connection in and of itself can create some hope. It can create some relatability. It can really give you a lifeline outside of what a therapy is like. Hey, I have a therapist. I see them Tuesdays from 12 to 1, right? Where a sponsor, you could probably contact them almost at any time. That's pretty much what I've heard. At the same time, those sponsors don't come with any type of formal training. So there is no accountability into the quality of care that a sponsor provides. There just isn't. And for some, this might never be an issue, right? There are some individuals in a 12-step program that could have a sponsor for years and never have an issue. But it can be dangerous too, because if somebody has never been trained or has experience on dealing with trauma as it comes up, or dealing with certain ethical situations, right? It just can. And the experience can be very different. Like, what if your sponsor moves? I've heard this. My sponsor is moving across company. Now I've got to find a new one. And now they don't jive with that second one, right? There's like, it's an inconsistency in this. Which leads us then to recovery coaching, right? To me, it kind of bridges a gap between both of these roles, right? There is going to be that structure and that training, right? So literally there is certification through the state of Michigan, which is I'm in. There's certification on a national level, which, I don't recall what organization provides this, but you're literally like certified. And in this certification, in order to keep it, you have to remain like have continued educations on a regular basis, very similar to like a licensed therapist, right? And this means as well that as people are being trained, there is a level of consistency of what you can expect in that role, right? And some accountability as well, right? You're certified in the state of Michigan. There's an issue with a recovery coach. You can go ahead and report them accordingly. That coach is also going to have lived experience, right? They have navigated it is literally a requirement to be in recovery themselves, right? I think, I don't know, maybe I should read a couple of books. It's been suggested. There's a gentleman by the name of William White that kind of created the recovery coach perspective. And I would speculate if I could go back in time, right, as the witch that I am, and ask William White, hey, right, like, why did this come about? Is because they would have seen some errors and some challenges with this very informal sponsorship role and an opportunity to really put some formalization around it. We are literally being trained this week to learn how to support an individual in their recovery journey, right? Those are the ways that most people are the options that most people are going to have available to them, which begs a last option that we have introduced in the Sovereign Phoenix, which is something that I call a recovery godmother or recovery godwitch, right? This is an individual that has, once again, gone through some training around, knowing how to coach, right? This is an individual that has walked the path. But more importantly, this is an individual that has walked the path embracing witchcraft in their recovery journey. So it is rooted both in recovery as well as spirituality. So you would literally be working with someone that has the same spiritual framework as you, right? They've been trained to support people in a responsible and very intentional way. And they're not going to avoid spiritual conversations, which is one of the things we are like literally being trained to do, right? They're going to actively engage in it. They're going to talk to you about deepening your intuition, trusting your intuition, recognizing what your spiritual gifts are. They're going to talk about, what your spiritual practices are. Have you performed magic? Are you doing spell? Are you doing ritual? Have you done the shadow work? Right? Of course, advising you to seek therapy if that's needed, advising you to work with a sponsor if that's something that's going to benefit you as well, right? Because the more people we kind of have on our side, the stronger our recovery becomes, right? But for those of us that are witches in recovery, I truly believe that all of these things aren't meant to be completely separated, right? So these roles are trauma informed, spiritual informed, recovery informed to help guide you in your journey. It's because I don't see recovery as something that sits out of spirituality. I see it as an expression of it. That when we truly don't have an understanding of what our spiritual beliefs are, what our purpose in life is, that we become lost and more susceptible to addiction. So recovery is that reconnection to oneself, figuring out what your purpose is, learning how to live in a way that reflects who you truly are. And as a witch, we have ways to practice that. It can vary, right? For some, we may want to talk to the trees. For others, we're dancing with the fairies. For others, we're doing deep, intense ceremonial magic with the angels. Right? For others, we're, stepping in and pulling in some of the, maybe even the Solomonic, demons. Who knows? Right? The recovery God witch path helps support individuals in that way. But of course, I said, no one way is better than another, right? There isn't a path. There's no like one prescribed path. Each of these roles is going to serve a purpose on somebody's journey, and each one can be valuable in and of its themselves, right? If you are working through deep trauma, therapy very well may be what is, necessary. Sessions once, twice a week to really, truly, work with and sit with an individual on that. If you need connection and just a shared experience, that sponsorship. If you need structure and accountability and really like, I love it because it feels like this recovery life coach, then recovery coaching might be your thing. And if you need to make sure that your journey includes a strong spiritual path, that recovery God witch. I'm not here to tell anyone what they should or should not do, right? But I am telling you that if you are early in recovery, or if you're in a place in your recovery and you are feeling uncertain of where to turn, what to do next, why things don't feel different, or why they still feel overwhelming, then I strongly encourage you to take a step towards one of these individuals that can help support you. Right? All right, my dear friends. That's enough for me. Much love for me to all of you. Until next time, have a beautiful rest of your week.